Hey, everybody. Dom Nicastro, CMSWire managing editor. Thanks for joining this LinkedIn Live today with Jeannie Walters, founder and CEO of Experience Investigators. What's going on, Jeannie?
Hey, Dom. I'm so happy to be here. This is so fun. We get to talk
Yeah.
CX.
Eh,
Everything's good.
yeah, when you and I talk CX, it's on. I mean, we get rolling, and we go off script, and
Oh,
that's
what
how it should
script?
be. I know what script. Well, I'm all talk already because in the pre-show I told you, yeah, I'm going to mention you're a CMS Wire columnist in your intro, and I totally didn't. So there we go. You're also a CMSWire.com columnist. Thank you for doing that.
That's right. It's my pleasure. It's fun to, interact with the readership that you have and the audience. So I'm happy to be here as well and connect every month.
Yeah, it's great to have your words on our site. The practitioners. I mean, you're listening to practitioners every day. You're a practitioner yourself,
Mhm.
and seeing it from the trenches, as we like to call it. So,
That's right.
speaking of from the trenches, we are going to take everybody's customer experience fails, Jeannie, and we're gonna just tell the world about them and have lessons learned. I mean, in our planning call, we're like, let's get negative. Here we go. But truly, I mean, the fails are those learning opportunities.
Yeah,
So we got 5 to go through today in about 20, 30 minutes. Are you ready to rock?
I'm ready to rock. And I bet we have an audience who's ready to rock too. So we welcome
Yes.
those questions. Bring them.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Send them in. We'll get you on. We'll put you on the spot. Oh, we shouldn't have said that. Now they're not going to comment. No, tell us. Be critical. Be complimentary. Maybe more complimentary than no. We'll take it. We'll take it. If we say something you don't agree with, that's a great conversation. So let's do it.
Mhm.
All right, number 5.
Yes.
We are talking about customer journey by org chart.
Mhm.
Why is this a CX fail so many times?
I see this everywhere, Dom. And part of what happens is we've been trained as business leaders to kind of think internally once we get past the sale, right? So if you look at traditional business plans, they focus all of their energy on acquisition and marketing and get those customers in the door. And then it automatically turns around into process and operations inside the organization. And so what happens is we come up with these great processes that we believe are going to work for our customers. And we say, well, first, our marketing team is going to do this. And then they're going to go to sales. And then once we sell them, they're going to go over to customer success. And then from there, we have to get invoicing involved and AP and procurement and everybody else that we need involved. And we literally tell the customer by org chart where they're going and what they're supposed to do instead of listening and figuring out what is the journey that the customer is actually on and how can we support that journey for them. And if you start with a journey by org chart, everything else gets harder. That's why I wanted to start with this as our number 5, because it's one of those that might be already happening in your organization. I hate to
Well,
say it.
and it happens on a consumer level because you feel it. Um,
Absolutely.
when it's you get the typical, that's a different department. I can't
Right.
help you. That's a different department. And
Yep.
well, what do you mean a different? I'm not going to put anyone on the spot. This is Sprint.
Mhm.
I don't see this company as different departments. I'm like, I just
That's right.
want an answer. I just want to be onboarded.
And one of the things that we hear from CX leaders everywhere is that, it's really hard to do this without coalitions throughout your organization, right? Everybody has to understand the entire customer experience because we can't deliver that on our own. And so when we ignore this, when we act like, you know what, I'm only going to put on my blinders and worry about my little section of the org chart, then we're creating extra work and angst and hardship for leaders throughout our organization as well. So to your point, if we're not representing one brand, we're actually making more work for ourselves as well as for the customers. So it's something I see again and again and again though.
Yeah. So let's take this fail and learn from it. Like,
Mhm.
how do we get better at this? Like,
Mhm.
it sounded pretty good. You were explaining. I'm like, oh, that's great. They got governance. They got a process,
Right.
customer that you could see it on a nice journey map, where the
Yeah.
customer's going, a little stick figure. Um, and then it's not the best customer experience. So,
Mhm.
where do the breakdowns usually happen, and how can we get in there and
Right.
fix it?
Well, I think there are two things that you said which are really important. One is you have to look at the customer journey, right? You have to figure out what is actually happening, not what you think is happening. You can't assume your processes are working as much as we think they are. They might be working on our end because, hey, we get the automatic notice, right? Like this person signed up. Awesome. But from their experience, they couldn't sign up on mobile. They had a terrible time on the site. They had to call somebody, et cetera, et cetera. And so if we don't understand what's actually happening with every touch point, then it's really hard to deliver a comprehensive, cohesive end-to-end journey. So that's number one. The other part is we all have to agree to what is ideal customer experience for our brand. Because in some cases, that means trade-offs, and we have to agree on that as an organization. Because I say ideal customer experience, and you might be thinking, that means being fast. We have to be as fast as possible. And I might be thinking, we have to be as accurate as possible when we get back to the customer. So I might take a week to get back to a customer because I want to be accurate. You are going to get back to them right away, maybe with inaccurate information, but you got back to them fast. And so both of us are coming from a place of good intentions, but we've never defined what success looks like. And so those are the types of things that can happen if we're not really understanding that customer experience is a company-wide initiative. It is a business strategy, and we have to define what success is so that everybody understands as they're building these processes within their departments. You know what? We have to make sure this is aligned with that journey, and we have to make sure that we're all aligned with what success actually means here. And then you can start having those conversations throughout your organization where you're all speaking the same language. Otherwise, it's really, really hard to do.
It's true because we all have those goals and in our objectives, and when we accomplish them, we're like, "That's yay! I did it!"
Yeah.
We publish this in many articles a month, like for putting it into my terms.
Right.
But we don't have like we need to have what that means for the customer. Like, what does
Right.
that mean for the reader? From our point of view, did
Yep.
the reader gain from you hitting your goal, and
Mhm.
why are you trying to hit this goal? Like,
Mhm.
what happens from a customer experience perspective if you do hit the goal or if you don't hit the goal,
Right.
right?
Right. And I
That's
think that ties in actually very nicely. I don't know if you meant to do this with my last article on CMSWire because we talk about the difference between a reactive and a proactive digital customer experience. And really that's what this is about is we often lose sight of the why. We often lose sight of the vision of what we're doing and how that actually impacts the customer because customer experience is full of metrics and problem solving and putting out fires and all of these things. And so it's really easy to kind of sink down to tactical on a daily basis. And then in 3 years, look around and think, what did we actually do here? And so
yeah.
that's why it's so important to really define that success, become aligned around that, and treat this like a strategy. It absolutely is a winning strategy, but we have to treat it that way.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. Like you feel so good when you hit your mark, you hit your target, you
Hmm.
feel great. It's in your objective. Everyone's happy. But defining success, is that just success for you as a
Hmm.
personal employee? Does it have ripple effects to the customer too? So
Absolutely.
great points
Absolutely.
there. Let's move on to number 2. Or is it
Number
4? I don't
four.
know. 4, right?
You're jumping
We're
ahead.
going down. We're going down. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's in my head now. All right. Here we go. Building tech first customer
Mhm.
experiences. Hey, we need technology, Jeannie.
We
Why can't
absolutely
we?
do.
Why can't we start with technology? What's the
Mhm.
problem?
This one, I know some people are scratching their head because they're thinking, well, we're told to put digital first, right? Like a few years ago, it was all about mobile. Remember, we're going to put mobile first. And now it's kind of digital transformation and digital this. And all of that is super, super important. But again, it has to be connected to the actual journey. And I'll give you an example. If you think about all the changes that were made in the pandemic and how much these different brands embraced technology in ways that were sorely needed, not just in that moment of time, but just because they were behind, right? Like customers want digital access, they want different options. But if they are, not thinking about the actual journey, what happens is, the groceries are a great example of this. So somebody said, well, this was great. I got to order my groceries online for the first time. This is amazing.
Heck yeah.
And then they drive to the store and they have no idea what to do there. Where do they pick it up? Who do they talk to? How do they call? Now, a lot of organizations have figured this part out now, but if we're not thinking through that whole journey, then we're releasing digital access without connecting it to the broader journey. And so that's why I thought this was a really important one to connect with, because when we talk about technology, often we get kind of seduced, right, by the tools and people are so smart. I'm so impressed by the technology that's created, and AI and machine learning and all of those things. Those are all really helpful things, but we have to think about it in the context of the real world. And sometimes we almost, just like we were talking about, we kind of silo those two groups and we say, okay, you worry about our stores over here and you worry about our digital experience. And yet it's all one experience now. And we have to just make sure that we're thinking of it that way instead of just saying, put technology first.
Yeah, and let's not forget, like in our CMSWire State of the Digital Customer Experience report, nice drop there, right? We found that most of the tools, anyway, a lot of these CX practitioners are not completely like over the moon happy,
Right.
right? They're not. I mean, these tools are great, and that's not targeting the vendors. It might be a case of, well, maybe they got the wrong tool. Maybe they
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a good internal training for the tool.
Yep.
Maybe they're not getting the most out of the tool. But the fact is, only 11% said that the tools were working well last report. This report did jump up to a whopping 21%.
Hey.
1 out of 5 think the tools work well. That's a great success rate.
Yeah.
It's good for like an email open rate, but it's not good for success rate. On these tools. So that's a good, to your point. It's like, if these tools aren't producing, why are we still making tool first CX?
And you bring up a really, really important point, because when we're talking about the tools that we use inside the organization as well, we are talking about, sometimes they're hard to implement. Sometimes they're hard to get adoption. Sometimes they're hard to really gather those insights that we need out of them. And so what happens is the goal morphs. And I've seen this in many organizations where they say, we're so proud because we finally got 30% adoption on our CRM platform, or we deployed X number of surveys through this tool. And again, we're kind of dropping down from that strategic vision of what this can be and why it can help, all the way down to, literally hash marks of how many people are on our tool now, how many features are we using, instead of thinking about it as, why are we sending the surveys? What will this tool allow us to do? How can we gather those insights? Because that's where again, we kind of get seduced by this stuff. And I totally get it. I'm a business owner. I have so many tech tools. I don't even know what to do. And part of it is because I sign up for something because it looks so promising. And then I realize, like, I'm not really getting what I need to. But you know what? I'm signed up for a year. I've already spent the money.
I don't want to
Let's
go through
make it
another
work.
demo.
Yeah,
I'm good.
exactly. And so if you start thinking that way, then you lose the opportunity to really think about, is this benefiting the customer experience? And is this helping us live up to that, definition of success for our organization as well? And is it contributing to the success of our organization? So this is a really multi-layered one, but I think it's really important.
Yeah, and I'd encourage people that are listening to drop in your number one tool. If you're a CX practitioner and touches customer experience in any way, shape, or form, tell us what your number one tool is, because I want to see how that matches up to our survey. We had the number one. Let me you guess, Jeannie Walters here. What was the number one answer? Like, for the question was, which tools do you use mostly to build your customer experience program? What do you think was number one?
I bet they answered the CRM.
Spot on.
Yep.
Everyone says, "Oh, they planned that." No,
yeah, nope.
60%. It's easily the leader. Number two, CMS, content management systems.
Yeah.
So
wow.
you're building customer experience with a CRM. Now, listen again. No offense to CRM makers. It's needed. It serves a great purpose. But when I think of CRM, and someone's going to probably disagree, hopefully, I think of sales first. I just think of sales first. That's it.
Well,
there's a company that has the name in that's popular, the most popular CRM in the world. They have sales in their name. So my big question is, like, wow. I thought I was going to see voice of the customer,
Mhm.
first, survey management, that kind of thing, those kind of tools. But I was shocked. Voice of the customer was only 18%.
Yeah. Well, and I think this goes again to how are we referring to this stuff in our organization? Because sometimes people talk about CX as if it's one of these things. So I've seen leaders and teams who have CX in their title, and really what they're doing is managing the CRM or deploying surveys, but they're not really looking at the entire customer experience. So then they start using CX as if that's what it is, right? They start saying, well, this is that's for our CX team if it's about the CRM. And I think one of the big, huge missings in our industry, and it's a pain, is we still don't have many great options. I'm sure there are some, just, to be clear here, but there aren't many great options to really centralize customer data to the
Mm.
point where everybody has visibility in the right way. So
Ooh.
if the CRM were perfect, when the customer, chatted with somebody in customer support and then got frustrated and called into the contact center, everybody would have that information at their fingertips. They would be able to say, "Hey, I saw this just happened. I'm going to take you to that next step." But that is one of the missing pieces. We don't always know their purchase history. We don't always know how many times they've complained. We don't always know who they're connected to in their household, right? This can be a big issue with financial services. So when we're talking about all of these things, I think sometimes the language that we throw around, it's kind of the language that we have. It's not necessarily the right vocabulary. So that's where I think we have this big problem with centralized customer data, visibility, and we have all of these different tools and we have to connect them all. And that's the part that is so painful. So I'm sure BI tools were probably on there somewhere, I hope. Um,
I don't see it. I only
okay.
wrote down the top 7, Jeannie. Don't put me on the spot. Come on, I don't have the report in front of me.
Well, but it's like we have to plug in, we have to, deploy the surveys, gather the feedback, plug that in, make sure we have that connected to the CRM, make sure we have that connected to the purchase engine and the sales engine, and all that. So it's just like that's the part that I think is really necessary and also the most challenging in our industry right now is centralizing all of that data.
Yeah, I don't see BI. I did call up the report. It's not in there. Well, product information management, that's
Yeah.
information management stuff. But yeah, like CXM software, customer experience management
Mhm.
software, was only 10% of people said that.
And that's probably because they're all using these different words, and because we don't
Yeah.
often call these things customer experience management software. We call them all these other things, but we don't really put it into that package.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, a question just came in off the spot. I
Great.
have a question for you, Jeannie. Curious how Jeannie, who has been working in this field for a good time, would rate the speed of progress. Does it feel like we're still having the same conversations we had a decade or longer ago? It's a great point. It's like, put this in a '09 Jeannie and
Oh
Dom
my
LinkedIn
goodness.
Live. Was
Yeah.
LinkedIn around in '09? Yeah, it was. No, LinkedIn Live might have not been.
No, it wasn't,
Um,
but oh, what a good question. And first of all, I started as a child, right? We have to contact
you did?
look at it.
I did
Um,
too. We have that in common. I started as a
right,
child as
exactly.
well.
That's how I've been in the industry so long.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny because I think we're still fighting a little bit of an uphill battle with getting everybody to understand that customer experience is not a nice to have, it's not soft. I have those conversations every single day. And what I hear from CX leaders now is, they're trying to get a seat at the big kids table, and often they're not introduced that way. It's seen customer experience is still seen as kind of what happens in the contact center or the feedback group, the customer insights group, or sales, any of those points of contact with the customer directly. But really, the way we talk about it at my company is it's a mindset, it's a strategy, and it's a discipline. And if you approach it that way, you start realizing like we are barely tapping the potential here of what great customer experience and what efficient and disciplined and strategic customer experience management within an organization could deliver for an organization. I mean, you look at any time in history and if customer experience is done well, they win. Those companies win. And so it's a winning strategy, but we have to treat it like that. And too often we treat it like it's this nice to have, or we treat it like it's a tactic. Like, people will say to me, "Oh, I just got a job. I'm a new customer experience person." I'm like, "That's great. What's the name of the team?" Customer journey mapping. Okay, great. That's a tool, right? That's something that we use to understand so that we can drive better decisions. But often we don't get to that level with customer experience. So we are having some of those conversations. I will say that when I started my business actually in 2009. So when I would say I'm in customer experience, people looked at me like I had three heads. It was not something we talked about. People now get it a little bit more depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah, my local, my hometown, I went down there last week or something, and I was pleased to see it was a small bank, and they had a title over this room. It was called Customer Experience Center.
There
How
you
cool
go.
is that? Like, they're
Yeah.
catching on, you know?
Yeah.
And I was told the, older clientele didn't understand really what that was, like, "What is
Mhm.
that where I can pay get my
Right.
check?" Or, so that's fine,
Yeah.
because it's, like, a relatively newish kinda term, right? Jeannie, we're only 2 in. We gotta
Oh
get
my
to some of
goodness.
these other ones.
We've got to keep moving, Dom.
That's the problem with you and I. We just get good problem to have, 'cause it would be weird if we didn't say anything on this.
That's true.
Uh, so the next one, number 3, let's flash it up. All right. Not building a true CX team, and this ties exactly into what you were talking about. So
Yeah.
basically, just you can expand upon your point, but I'm curious to know. I always ask our readers, our practitioners that we talk to, like, who leads CX?
Mhm.
Who is it? What's your title, and what's your team look like? So
Yeah.
what are you experiencing here in the industry?
Well, I'm sure when you ask that question, you see everything under the sun, right? There's a lot of marketing, there's a lot of tech, there's a lot of digital. And really, if we do not treat this like a business discipline, we're just not going to be able to reap the rewards. And part of that is having people with real accountability, real resources. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, a CMO or a VP of marketing is kind of called over and somebody says, "Hey, guess what? You're in charge of customer experience now. How cool is that?" You get no resources, no team, and you still have to do everything else, but we're just giving you that. And so we don't, give people the training, the tools, the people, the resources because we don't treat it like a business discipline. The example I always use is, can you imagine at the end of, a quarter where the sales team didn't meet their quota quite as well as they usually do?
Mhm.
Can you imagine somebody looking around and going, "Well, I guess sales doesn't work. We should just get rid of the sales team."
Yeah, right.
But that happens to CX people because they're put into this position a lot. And what we need to do as CX leaders is kind of demand respect. And the way we do that is by speaking the business language. So, we have a tool called the CX Charter where we literally say, okay, who's on the team? Because sometimes you don't get people full time, right? Sometimes you have to rely on volunteers, the CX champions or the CX advocates. So you document that and you say, okay, who are we getting for what? What is everybody's roles and responsibilities? What are we agreeing to? And then how are we prioritizing what we're working on? And that all comes back to, okay, if we work on these three things, that will help us with this business goal. That's pretty cool, right? But if we don't talk like that, then we become what I call number narrators, where we just say, "Hey, this number went up. This number went down.
Yeah,
Look at that."
yeah.
So I think when we build the CX team and we really give it the respect it deserves, then we're basically saying, you know what, we're not just committed to this as an idea, but we're making sure that in order to get a return on this investment, we're investing. We are making sure that we are putting the right people and the right resources in the right places with the right accountability and all of those things. So this is one I would love to see more around because there are very, very few organizations who really commit to this.
Does it need a title? Does the leader
Mhm,
of the customer experience team need a title, like a formal title, the chief customer
mhm.
officer, VP customer experience, or does it matter?
I've seen this so many different ways. I don't think it necessarily matters about the title. It's more about the who of the person because ideally you have, this does come from the CEO, ideally. And then if you have that CX team, you need a C-suite sponsor. You need somebody. And I've seen everybody from, I saw a chief technology officer in that role. I've seen a chief HR person in that role. So you can have people, we talk a lot about CX change agents because they don't necessarily have CX in their title, but they understand that this is the way forward, and they kind of by osmosis get other people on board because they're in the right position to do so. So I'm not sure I have a strong opinion about the title. It's more about making sure that you have people who are dedicated to this in the right ways.
But it looks so cool to have CCO,
It does.
right?
I love
Chief-
CCOs. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah. VP of CX,
Mhm.
Chief Happiness Officer, all those
Right.
interesting ones.
Right. And
Um,
I mean, when the other question here is like the C-suite is getting pretty crowded in some ways. Like we had a client who had a chief technology officer, a chief information security officer, and a chief data officer.
yeah.
And so if we slice and dice, it gets a little crazy. So part of this is if your CMO is really the one who's the executive sponsor for the CX team, then that's okay. Just make sure they know that that's part of their role and part of their accountability.
Yeah. Yeah. We've seen that a lot. We see a lot of intermingling there between
Yep,
the CMO and CX and marketing and CX a lot. So,
for sure.
all right, down to two. You ready?
Ready.
Number two, channel forcing. What do we mean by that? Is let me guess. A brand puts a brand puts a customer into the experience that they want the customer to be in.
Exactly. You're so smart, Dom. Uh, yeah, it's really, we see this all the time too as customers, don't we? When we're like, I really want to talk to somebody about this latest bill, and we look and there's you cannot find a number anywhere. You can't find any way to call somebody. Or the only number you can find, this is my favorite, the only number you can find is for sales,
No.
but there's no service or support number.
Yes.
Um, so that's one, example, but it's also everything from if I'm trying to chat with a human being and you tell me I'm going to chat with a human being and then you drop me into a chat with a bot and I recognize it as a bot, that's channel forcing as well.
Mm.
It's a matter of kind of integrity with your customers. It's making sure that they have the option they need. Another example of this is I have a friend and she has a disability. And so she has some speech issues. So she does not want to call. And sometimes that's the only option they give her. And so she'll call and say, I need another option. And they spend 20 minutes basically trying to understand what she's asking. And she's like, if you would just let me text you, this would be so much easier. So we have to think through not just, choice in general and kind of respect for that, but also if we're talking about inclusive CX, this is one of the ways that we can be inclusive and accessible for our customers is make sure that they have the channel that they are most comfortable contacting us with. And if we take that away, then we have to realize that the consequences are saying to that customer, you know what, this is not important enough to us. And so you're going to have to go through our channel that is our process, not really your journey.
Yep. Start with my own two eyes. In a pharmacy, a elderly gentleman said, "Can I have my vaccine, please?" And they said no.
Ugh.
They said no because he didn't sign up online. And he said, "What if you don't have a computer?" They said, You have to sign up online."
Oh my gosh.
And I ended up signing him up for his vaccine, and he got it
So
done that later that week.
the
Um,
CX was dumb.
the CX was dumb, but you can't, and this ties into the last one.
Mhm.
This ties exactly into the last one. Corporate and frontline disconnects, because
Yes.
you cannot implement a CX program that has the part of it says, well, let's try to make them go online, but if they can't, Dom Nicastro might be there to sign
Mhm.
them up. Like, that's not a
Right.
good plan.
Right.
So, so what happens is, and this ties into employee experience and customer experience, because that frontline pharmacist, it was not her fault.
Right.
The team, the corporate team, the digital team, whoever, did not build in a
Mhm.
process for her to adjust to a different experience.
Yep.
And it ended up a poor experience for this poor old man who probably wanted to do all his errands for the week.
Yep.
The
Yep.
vaccine, go get the groceries, then go home and take a nap, and he couldn't do it.
And that's you having empathy and understanding his real journey. And what they missed was that this isn't, we tend to act like customers are marching through our journey and nothing else. But all of our customers have real lives and they have other stuff going on. And so we are just a small little smidge part of their world, as much as we want to think that we're this, important partner or whatever to them. And so we have to think about their real life. So one of the things I push is this idea of micro mapping, where you literally think about, okay, somebody's walking into the pharmacy to get a vaccine. What happens? And you get down to that minutia, because if you don't, you miss things like that. And I mean, we've all seen this in so many different ways, but I think when we think about, what, if I had an experience where I was returning a bunch of things after the holidays, I bought my husband all the wrong things and I I was returning them for him. And this store, I had bought them online. It said, go ahead and go to the store to return them. I went to return them. They had to call a manager up to the front desk. The manager was like, whew.
Was this the grill?
It wasn't. It
Oh,
wasn't.
you told the grill story before.
Oh,
right?
yeah, the grill too. Yes.
Yeah.
But this was, so the manager had to literally call in everything, every single SKU
Yeah.
to see what the price was online to return it. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. And he said, no, it's a nightmare. We all hate this. And he's like, I'm so sorry. You're going to be here for several minutes because I can't do anything about this.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect example of this total disconnect. I mean, I start my workshops with a worksheet where the first question is, tell me about your most recent interaction with a customer. And I watch all the executives squirm because they've never talked to a customer.
Yeah.
And if they have, it was many, many moons ago. And so they start looking around thinking, wait a minute, when you say, this is the question I get, when you say customer, do you mean internal customer? Do you mean, because they're trying to find an angle, and it's such a bright light on the fact that they are not really in touch with the customer experience.
Yeah. So here's the big takeaway from this LinkedIn Live today, Jeannie Walters. It's be more like undercover boss.
Yes.
Right? No, for real.
For
you look at the problems that are uncovered on that show.
Yeah.
Right. If people don't know, it's just a quick a CEO or a high level executive pretends to be applying for a job pretty much at their brand.
Yeah.
And they go in and they meet these amazing, hardworking folks. Sometimes they're not so amazing and they find that out fast. But they meet these hardworking folks and they interact with customers directly, and they know exactly what the problems are in producing experiences because they walk in the customer's shoes. And if they just did that at the pharmacy, Jeannie, that gentleman would have been able to sign up in 2 seconds, because they would have accounted for. There's a nursing home or assisted living right next to the pharmacy.
Right.
All you have to do is look at that building and look at the pharmacy and say, oh, some people might walk in.
Yep, exactly. And maybe we could just have a laptop that the pharmacist can fill in for them. Like, there are so many workarounds for this that you don't have to change your internal process as drastically as some people think. You just have to think through it.
Yeah. And no flexibility is built in. That older gentleman, I mean, he's probably used to years and years of like, we'll take care of you, Bob. No problem.
Right. Exactly.
Like, come here, something I did. But the employee should be empowered to do. They should be empowered.
Exactly right. I just heard something today. I don't have a ton of information, but all these problems with the airlines and the baggage claims and losing baggage and all of that. One of the international airlines just asked their executives to be baggage handlers for 3 months.
Ooh, did they take them up on the offer?
I didn't get that far. That's why I don't want to say too much. But I mean, what a great example of like, you know what? If you think this is a problem, come help us.
Wow.
Figure out what are we doing and how does this impact the customer experience?
And that's where undercover boss becomes a verb. Just let's undercover boss this. Let's undercover boss this.
That's right. I hope it does. I hope it is a verb.
Jeannie, we got a lot of good comments. People are finding things ridiculous. People loving things we say. So it's good. It's good. It's good balance there. And can't thank you enough. We should wrap up. LinkedIn Live here with Jeannie Walters, founder and CEO, Experience Investigators, Dom Nicastro, CMSWire. Jeannie, we appreciate having you on and being a CMSWire columnist.
It is absolutely my pleasure. We could do this all day, Dom.
I know. We're gonna hang up and like keep the conversation going. What, honey? I'm just talking to Jeannie Walters. I'll be right there. Oh, all right.
Thanks everybody for being here and the good questions.
Yep. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good one.